Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we're continuing our Jiang Wei's Northern Expeditions Let's Talk Lore series with episode 6 titled Zhang Yi's Sacrifice. Before we get started, here's the answer to our trivia question from the end of our last episode, and be sure to stay tuned until the end of this episode for a brand new trivia question. Now, last time we concluded by discussing Shu Han's rationale behind authorizing Jiang Wei's 7th Northern Expedition, as in early 254, the Shu Han court received a secret missive from a Wei officer named Li Jian, who was the garrison commander at the key outpost at D Path. If you recall, the D Path was one of Jiang Wei's key targets during his rather uneventful 6th Northern Expedition. So if Li Jian's defection is indeed genuine, it would be a huge boon for the Shu Han side, as not only would Li Jian's troops be a welcome addition, there was also a large quantity of supplies being stored at D Path, and this became the key reason for Jiang Wei's 7th Northern Expedition, as the Shu Han side believed that if Jiang Wei's forces could get reinforced and, more importantly, resupplied at the D Path, a longer campaign could be sustained deep within Wei territory. And in order for this plan to work, Jiang Wei needed to reach the D Path without alerting the Wei border checkpoints in the south. So Jiang Wei turned to the western path through the Tibetan Plateau, which was first shown to him by the Hu chieftains on their escape south, and later used by Jiang Wei during his 5th Northern Expedition to attack the Siping Commandery all the way in the north in the year 250. Except this time, Jiang Wei didn't have to march all the way north to the Siping Commandery, as he simply needed to outflank the western boundaries of the Longxi Commandery before cutting back east through the mountains to reach the D Path and rendezvous with Li Jian, who will hopefully defect as he has promised in his letter. Of course, there were still many within the Shu Han court who, in the aftermath of Fei Yi's assassination by a former defected Wei officer in Guoxiu, that believed Li Jian's secret missive was just another Wei plot to entice and entrap Jiang Wei's forces, but with General Zhang Yi arguing in favor of trusting Li Jian's defection, the Shu Han court eventually got behind this idea, and by late spring of 254, Generals Jiang Wei and Zhang Yi set out for the D Path as Jiang Wei's 7th Northern Expedition got underway. Now, before we proceed here, it's important to properly introduce General Zhang Yi, as he played a big role in setting up this northern expedition. Born in the Baxi Commandery within the Shu region, Zhang Yi came from a poor peasant family. In his youth, he worked his way up to becoming an assistant for the local county mayor, but during Liu Bei's conquest of the Shu lands against Liu Zhang, unrest swept across Baxi as local bandits became more daring, given the weakening of the local governments, as Liu Zhang's forces were too busy on the back foot trying to slow down Liu Bei's advance towards Chengdu. And during one such bandit attack on Zhang Yi's county, Zhang Yi would make a name for himself as a capable fighter when he single-handedly protected the county mayor's family as he fought off multiple waves of bandit attacks during their escape to safety. Due to the fame gained from this incident, Zhang Yi would end up being promoted to a provincial level position, as he would continue to climb his way up until he became a commandery garrison commander in the year 227. At this time, Zhuge Liang was in the preparation stages of his first northern expedition, so a large amount of military supplies was being transported to Hanzhong, which attracted the attentions of a local bandit named Zhang Mu, who constantly raided and stole from the Shu Han supply lines near Guanghan and Mianzhu commanderies. And in response, Zhang Yi was sent forth to eliminate Zhang Mu. But Zhang Mu and his band of bandits were quite crafty, in that they would scatter and hide in the mountains every time the Shu Han forces would appear. Unable to locate this bandit, Zhang Yi resorted to trickery himself, as he would spread a false rumor that he wanted to marry his sister to Zhang Mu and recruit their bandits to join his army. Tempted by the chance to elevate themselves from being just mere bandits, Zhang Mu agreed to attend to an engagement feast hosted by Zhang Yi. Bringing only 50 bandits with him, Zhang Mu soon found himself in a trap laid by Zhang Yi, as after a few rounds of drinks, Zhang Yi summoned his troops and massacred Zhang Mu and his 50 bandits at the feast. Then, with the rest of the unsuspecting bandits leaderless, Zhang Yi easily found their camp in the mountains and eliminated this threat once and for all. While this achievement should have earned Zhang Yi another promotion, he ended up becoming unfortunately ill during this time period when he came down with a severe case of rheumatism in his joints that nearly disabled him. As Zhang Yi came from a poor background, he lacked the money to seek proper medical help, as he would eventually have to beg Guanghan's administrator, He Zhi, for the money needed to heal himself. And once his body got better, Zhang Yi would join General Ma Zhong's army as the vanguard officer in command of 300 troops, as Zhang Yi would mainly be involved in putting down multiple Qiang and Nanman rebellions from the period of 231 to 233 in the southern commanderies of Shuhan, as Zhuge Liang's final few northern expeditions provided an opening for some of these suppressed minorities in the south. And because of Zhang Yi's success against the Nanman rebels in these years, he would end up being promoted to become the administrator of the E06 commandery, which have long been a commandery for Shuhan only in name, as two of the previous administrators were killed by Nanman rebels, and newly appointed administrators simply refused to go to the commandery capital out of fear for their lives. But with Zhang Yi's appointment, the U.S. commandery would eventually fall back in line, as it would take Zhang Yi 15 years in this position to restore order, repair relationships with friendly Nanman tribes while putting down rebellious ones, as the road system here was repaved to facilitate important salt and iron trades from this commandery, and fortifications were constructed in the commandery to prevent future uprisings. By the end of his 15-year stint in Yuesui, Zhang Yi would become an immensely popular and respected figure in the southern parts of Shuhan, as he would eventually be promoted to return to the imperial court in Chengdu with a new title called Dangkou Jiangjun, or the general who eliminated the rebels. Now, despite his new general title, Zhang Yi at this point in his life was no longer capable of fighting, as his long bout with rheumatism has rendered his legs completely useless, as he could not even stand up without the help of crutches. So initially, when the plans for the 7th Northern Expedition was being made, the court did not want Zhang Yi to take part, or at the very least, he should be traveling with the reserve troops in the rear. But as Zhang Yi was the one who vouched for Li Jian's defection, Zhang Yi felt personally responsible to take the lead in this campaign, despite his conditions, as he argued directly to Emperor Liu Shan that he wanted to have this chance to serve his country before his health condition takes his life. If they're successful in taking the Liang province in this campaign, then he would happily serve as its new garrison commander and protect this newly conquered land. And even if they should fail, then he would also be happy to give his life in this attempt. Touched by Zhang Yi's determination and loyalty, Liu Shan was brought to tears, as he agreed to allow Zhang Yi to serve once again as a vanguard general for this campaign to make first contact with Li Jian at Di Path. Now, when Zhang Yi's vanguard forces arrived at Di Path, the fear of Li Jian's betrayal was lifted when Li Jian, the local garrison, as well as the local civilian population, collectively defected to the Shuhan side. There was also a large amount of supplies turned over as promised by Li Jian, but not everything went smoothly, as Zhang Yi and Jiang Wei's presence in Longxi has already alerted the local prefect in Chentai, who immediately sent his top general in Xu Zhi to crush this defection at Di Path. With Jiang Wei's main army still a fair distance away, Zhang Yi's vanguard forces and Li Jian's small garrison force soon found themselves under attack and heavily outnumbered by Xu Zhi's army. Despite this and his disabled legs, Zhang Yi strapped himself into his horse and led the charge against Xu Zhi's army in order to buy more time for Jiang Wei's main force to arrive. In the fighting that ensued, Zhang Yi's vanguard forces would fight until almost complete annihilation, as Zhang Yi himself would also perish in this attack. But despite these heavy losses on the Shuhan side, the Wei forces under Xu Zhi suffered even more casualties, as Zhang Yi's vanguard heavily outtraded Xu Zhi's forces, to the point that when Jiang Wei's army arrived on scene, Xu Zhi had no choice but to flee, with his now wounded army as they fled for the safety of the fortifications at Xiangwu. Seizing upon this opportunity paid forth by blood, Jiang Wei gave pursuit, as the Shuhan forces would encircle Xiangwu, where Xu Zhi's exhausted men would be eventually defeated, as Xu Zhi himself would also be slain in the fighting, avenging Zhang Yi's sacrifice at the path. Along with this win, Jiang Wei was able to capture 3 counties in total inside the interior of Longxi, as he would eventually return to Shuhan victorious with not only troops and civilians from Li Jian's defection at the path, but also with more civilians captured at Heguan, Lintao, as well as Xiangwu, as the 7th Northern Expedition would go down as Jiang Wei's biggest success to date, and all of this would never have been possible without Zhang Yi. And with this success, Jiang Wei would return back to Chengdu, where he would start immediately making plans for a follow-up attack in the spring of 255, as he wanted to continue to pressure the Wei forces in Longxi before they could recover from their losses suffered in this campaign. But this time, for the first time in Jiang Wei's career, a dissenting voice at court would be raised, arguing against yet another northern expedition so soon after the conclusion of the previous one. And to find out who would speak up against Jiang Wei, and if the 8th Northern Expedition can get underway smoothly, come back next time as we'll continue our series tomorrow with episode 7. Hopefully y'all enjoyed this episode enough to consider subscribing to the channel for more content on Three Kingdoms history, or simply support the channel with a like or comment below. And as always, I'll see you all next time. Bye!